Hello, ladies and gentlemen of YouTube. I am currently rounding off the first day of MSI. You might be surprised by the overlay and all that jazz. I am the official G2 co-streamer for MSI. All of the teams are getting access to it, and I have a pretty decent relationship with G2. So I'm repping G2. Feels good. I'm very grateful that I got this opportunity. Obviously, MSI is something that I love doing, and G2 is a fantastic org. So it is a pleasure and an honor. What we usually do is we do kind of a rundown of each day. Today was kind of a light day, very quick rundown. We have patch 13.7, 13.8 are the updates, but in terms of what people are drafting, it remains very similar. It is something that we need to get a feel for. Not a lot of big nerfs happened, and a lot of the strong. I think the key thing, right, is that the meta is always defined by what is being played in AD, and nothing really changed hard enough for that to shift, right? So we have the Zeri Lulu, got a slight nerf, you have the Jinx, you have the Aphelios. As long as these are the champions that are the AD carries, then the jungles and the supports and the champions in the other positions are going to be picked in order to cater to that, because these AD carry positions are just too strong, right? The first series of today was PSG versus DFM. I have to give a shout out to PSG's AD carry because he was fucking good, by the way. It's like now we're going to go on this journey, and what I want to share is like my initial impressions of the teams, because some of these teams I haven't watched them at all, right? Because I only focus on the major regions. But PSG WAKO, Waka Flocka Flame, whatever his name is, he is crazy good, crazy good. I think that this is a player that for sure that some LPL team is going to pick him up by the end of this year when his contract runs out. This is just usually what happens to the PCS teams. WAKO was smurfing out of his mind. This game in particular, looking at the draft, you see some of the usual patterns. Here where Vi was picked. It's surprising that Xayah doesn't get locked in, but this is not something that you see everywhere, right? So they locked Jinx, which is perfectly fine. They got Jinx Annie. Annie got a nerf in the super position. So you can almost more safely assume that Annie is going to go into mid. Some of the answers into Annie have definitely gotten better because Road of Ages is nerfed, and it's not as easy and beneficial to buy it as it was before the nerf. So basically they increased the gold of Catalyst by 200, which matters a lot, right? So you have the Annie and Aphelios Ari. Ari Vi is a combo. Aphelios into Jinx is a common answer. Trash on 3 with the Blitzcrank ban, very common. Here was surprising, PSG kind of showcased that they don't believe in the Wukong too much, right? They removed Viego Zinzao over Wukong. Wukong is something that has been nerfed, and I know the junglers in the call when we are hanging out with the boys co-streaming, then they all claim Wukong is quite weak, but I believe this is going to be a staple champion because he provides something that is so inherently unique. If you go with the route where you are going to punish him in the jungle, I think that's a viable strat, but I think Wukong is still perfectly fine and perfectly viable. They go for Nautilus, K-Santa here on 4-5, Nautilus into Trash to go with the Aphelios. This is a lane that has a lot of burst, Nautilus with setup, perfectly fine, K-Santa and then Malphite on 5. This is a kind of a good look for DFM, right? Very easy, come to play, Jinx gets ahead, one reset, a lot of burst, front end burst. I think it's a good look here for DFM. I feel like I need to drink some water, but I don't have water. I don't have water. So Malphite into K-Santa, I think it's a hard lane for Malphite, but in the end, like Malphite just has an easier access to backlane than Sion does. So, you have a target in Aphelios, and you just need to follow up on whatever Hanny and Wukong are doing, so it's all good. This game was kind of decided, in my mind, at the point where there was this big Rift Herald fight. So I'm just going to show it to you guys. See this big Rift Herald fight. The key thing that I want you guys to pay attention to, I don't know if the overlay is going to show us that, but you have Aphelios right now and isolated 1v1 against the Jinx. Jinx has R, can send it into the situation. Junja is low HP, but they paid a very expensive price for it. It's like right now Tibis is used. You see it's dying here on our screen here, 30 HP. And also there's no Wukong ult, so a lot of key ultimates are being used. The only advantage that they have off of it is the fact that Junja is low HP. All in all, this is a fight that on paper, in hindsight, should be favorable for DFM. We let it play out. They Malphite ulted the floor. Here, they use their juice, and also the Annie with the catalyst is not doing that much damage, no Annie ult and so forth, and PSG basically annihilate the situation here. The main thing that is so crazy here is that we don't get to see this, but currently Jinx is losing all of her HP under the turret. And that's what makes this into such a crucial swing of gold. So you look at right now, Jinx in isolated 1v1 is recalling. I don't know what happened to her, they're not showing what happened to her, and right now Aphelios is just enjoying platings. He enjoyed so much platings, the gold advantage became immense, and when you're playing these front-to-back compositions, the enemy team that is, you know, ahead is going to just have such a good time. I think the Harp was struggling on the Thresh, and I think that if there was any kind of redeeming player on DFM, it was occasionally Yutapon. In this game, they did get some opportunities based off of Junja kind of overreaching and overextending. Here, he doesn't need to cross into this bush. This bush just doesn't matter, especially if no one's showing on top. If someone shows on top wave, then it's okay for you to press into this area and put a pink and clear vision and then maybe pressure Nash. But no one's showing on the top wave. Currently, they're sacking the top wave. I think if that's the case, you should just beeline into Nash and start hitting it here and then pressure the enemy to enter into you. So this happened. Some back and forth, but in the end, you know, I think this was the big decider here. Azzy got a huge Q. Like, this is probably the biggest value Q I've ever seen from a K'Sante ever, which is just something that doesn't look like it should be realistic even to happen, right? It's like, look, he Qs everybody. His basic spell turned into an ultimate. And yeah, it became an utter disaster. Even though the position looked kind of bad here, Azzy's conditions were very good in this game, and he managed to get a triple Q, and then at the end of it, the game was just over. Once again, WAKO really impressed me. This is like my player to look out for on this team. I think WAKO was really, really clean. Junja had some moments, but all in all, you know, good stuff. Coming into game number 2. DFM went to blue side, they're banning Lucian, Cannon, Syndra. Ahri first pick, which was surprising, right? You invite the Lissandra, you invite some combos. They went for Aphelios Viego. Vi is out as well. PSG believe that Vi has high prio still. They just banned it. First picked it on the other side. Looked good in the first game, honestly. I think Vi just provides something so unique with their ultimate that this is something the team's always going to go for. Aphelios Viego, and then the reason they pick Viego here is because they know they're going to pick Lissandra on 3 here always to match into Ahri, and Viego Lissandra is a very decent combo, right? So you have Zeri and Wukong. Here I didn't like it too much, the fact that they didn't pick Lulu here, because I think that your support situation will always become worse if you go 4-5 here, especially when you have a combo AD. Zeri Lulu I think is a combo bot lane that I think that you should look to invite, and also on top of that you know that Lissandra on 3 is coming. I think here if you're in a situation where we go Zeri and Lulu and the enemy matches support on 3, then I think that you just ban Lissandra and you're very happy. And then last game you're willing to drop jungle, so why not just do a repeat of that, right? I think that just picking Lulu here is way more important. Maybe they wanted to play Wukong into Viego, which I think is a decent matchup for Wukong, but I think Lissandra just gets more value here, and then Lulu with no Zeri I think is a lot worse. Here I thought that when Lulu was banned and Thresh was out, that PSG are going to look to pick Viego, basically Renata Glask here themselves, unless they're scared of, let's say, for example, Soraka. I think that K'Sante blind is perfectly fine, you know, into Viego, Lissandra, Aphelios, I think is perfectly okay, but then he is showing Gragas, so isn't really blind, I'm talking shit. They wanted to 5-pick support. I didn't think Blitzcrank was that great here. I think Renata and Zeri can control the wave, and I think that it makes Blitzcrank a lot worse. I think also Aphelios Blitzcrank isn't the strongest combo because Aphelios is a little bit too weapon reliant in order to make sure that Blitzcrank gets the value that he needs, you know, out of his hooks. Because there's a lot of weapons that Aphelios, even if they hook, they just lose if Renata and Zeri fight all in. So I didn't like Blitzcrank too much here. I thought they were going to go for like maybe Soraka. But all in all, I think in hindsight, when you are already committing to the Viego Lissandra, I think looking for Renata on 4 can be very good. The enemy is already very all in and very short range in Zeri, Wukong, and Ari, and then maybe enemy goes Soraka on 5, but I think just Renata and Viego together is such a good comp, and I think that if you're PSG setting up for Junja to succeed, I think is a good strat. Looking at the game, DFM had immaculate, like a crazy good position to win the game. And somehow they threw it. It's like they were in these conditions and somehow they lost the game. And I have to point my criticism towards Troll 2 because, you know, this was a Troll 2 performance. He's pushing forward when it is not necessary. He was giving up kills when it was not necessary. In terms of how he approached fights and you know, tried to fight for space for his teammates was very, very terrible. So somehow, yeah, looking at these conditions, right, let me just pause here for a moment. It's like, let it play so the bars will go down. It's like, how could you possibly lose this game? You gotta really run it down to lose. It's truly... Ish. Pressure Nash, pretty basic standard stuff. And if you ask, you know, how did they get so ahead this game? It came off of the back of just bot lane advantage into dive setups, into big fights breaking out, into Zeri just getting too far ahead of the curve. So this was the fight. Let's take a look at this one. Yeah, the key thing is you always have to pay attention to your AD, right? It's like you're not necessarily buying space in the fight or creating anything in the fight if your AD can't hit, right? And that is so ultra reliant. If you're creating circumstances where the enemy can kite back and hit and you're just running after them, you're always going to have a hard time. And WAKO played this super well because he keeps hitting right, and then he finds the window when his Conqueror is fully stacked and he's getting so much blue weapon value. And then he just pops forward with Gale Force and looks for lethal. It's very nice. I like that a lot. PSG get a gold swing back. Still, you know, the conditions of the game, I don't think that, you know, things have changed too much. I still think that Yutapon with his advantage here, you know, Harp finishing his Mikhail's, being able to deny any of Lissandra's combos or plays onto Yutapon. Still think that the fighting chances are pretty decent here. But once again, Troll 2 just keeps creating these circumstances where he can hit. Basically, he's making sure that the enemy can hit. And on top of that, he's creating a circumstance where there's always this divide. And you see Azi here, he's kiting backwards. He knows that the fight is already won. He's not like running into the Zeri or creating a circumstance where there's awkwardness. He's kiting back because even if Zeri hits him here, they're not really creating more space. They are already busy here fighting the K'Sante, right? So always, so you may ask me, it's like, what do you want to see here from K'Sante? K'Sante needs to push forward to maybe look for Qs. He's looking for Q flash, right? Or which is, you know, some cases fine, but I don't think it's necessary because the enemy needs to push forward for the Drake. Let them push forward to the Drake. I would play more in this pocket as K'Sante. Go into the pit and pressure the Viego, and pressure the Viego in a way where Aphelios can't hit you, right? That would have been a lot better. Then maybe he can create a way where he pulls out the Drake for his team. As long as he's not in the range to get hit, then all is good. And then the main way you need to start a fight is you need to let the enemy push forward, and when they overcommit for the Drake, that is when you strike. But they just kind of go too premature because the enemy is already pushing to kite backwards. And we continue. Here, once again, the same, right? It's like, let the situation breathe. You have created now a circumstance where your team is pull the Drake out to the pixel. The enemy's sphere of influence needs to break this point here. You see the line I'm drawing with my mouse? This point, this line here, this is the point of influence that the PSG needs to break in order for you to really, really commit. But right now you're committing in a way where your team is posturing to fight in this position. So this is very bad. What do I want him to do? Just stay in the pit. Just stay in the pit. Just stay in the pit, let the enemy commit, right? Stay in the pit, or just go all the way back. Maybe play from this pocket. You have flash, you have ways to play. Like, you can just take it easy. The enemy needs to push forward onto you. Your job right now is to just block Blitzcrank hooks and take it easy, right? But always it's the same thing. It's like here, WAKO's already hitting, stacking Conqueror, he's already hitting. And right now, it's like already, it's like, look how deep he is when you're playing with these type of champions that enjoy the enemy pushing into you. All right. And that's game. This was very clutch too. It's like they won at the Drake fight, right? Which was insanely close. Kind of rewatching this fight, seeing what exactly happened here. Because it looked so bad at first. But then I think the issue is just Ozzy is refusing to play the game. Like at this point, my boy here is really... I hear Ozzy's kind of griefing. Here he needs to push forward. Because Ozzy's not doing anything in this fight. He didn't do anything. Okay. Yeah, PSG somehow managed to squeeze Nash out of the window. Oh yes. This is what I was looking for. Once again, the same thing, right? It's like Toll 2 just needs to hold his spells. A man just needs to hold his spells here, right? Right now, Yubao commit already. They see Junja. Yutapon is hitting. You don't need to do anything. You just have to hold your spells and wait. But now instead this botched engage from PSG turns into a situation because Toll 2 just sacrifices his whole HP bar, right? So Glissando was so deep and all Keisante needed to do was just to wait. That's a story of how to play tank, guys. Toll 2, he played tank as if he's playing a looking for raid, you know. He queued up his tank and he's just pulling all the bosses and all the mobs at the same time and you can just heal through it because, you know, it is what it is. But don't like it. Don't like it. Let's move on to the G2 series. G2, they did this funky Nautilus first pick, Aphelios Sejuani, and then Jinx Nidalee. They followed this draft structure 2 games straight. Lower lines, Loud, ban, Draven, Cannon, Annie. Annie ban is kind of weird. I think that you shouldn't really ban Annie against G2. It's not something they really want to play. So I think the Annie ban is weird. But I have the privilege of watching every G2 game, right? So I can understand their... I have a better read on them, probably. Aphelios Sejuani gets locked in. Sejuani is something that got nerfed. So this is something that I wanted to monitor and pay attention to. They go Jinx, Nidalee, and then you see why they wanted to go to Sejuani, the Renekton, right? The Renekton is something that we see a lot less of, but nevertheless, they went for it. Jace Trash is banned, and then here, like you could have also created a circumstance where you go Nautilus support, for example, and then you go, let's say you pick Gragas into Renekton, and then you pick, you know, an AD mid laner. Hard to find, right? But maybe you could play like... Tristana as an example. I just wanted to point that out because this 1-2-3 is quite flexible in what you want to achieve. Nevertheless, Jace, Trash, Blitzcrank, Leona, Tamkenjon 4. So Tamkenjon 4, they're picking it in preparation for the potential Nautilus, but I think the issue with picking Tamkenjon 4, I think you're keeping 5-pick mid to gain absolutely no value. 2 games in a row, Loud did the same. They're just picking 5-pick mid They are picking a very weak, very weak top laner on 3, 2 times blind, and they're picking Tahm Kench on 4. And Tahm Kench on 4, it's like if you're picking Tahm Kench blind, you're going to fuck yourself over. The answers into Tahm Kench are endless. You can pick Lulu, you can pick Rel, you can pick Pyke, you can pick whatever you want to make your composition stronger and the identity of the composition stronger. And that is a massive problem. I thought here when Sejuani is showing that they're going to pick maybe Akali on 5 or maybe Sylas on 5 into the Nautilus. I thought this would be the way, but they went for Ahri. So Ahri Sejuani, Nautilus is going to get value from buying magic resistance, which is obviously what it's going to do because it's tank on mid lane. I just think that in hindsight here, how you punish the Nautilus is that you just make sure that you pick support on 5. I think counter picking support is way too important in the meta, and the biggest issue that blue side needs to solve is how do we blind pick support. That's why on blue side picking the Zeri Lulu as a combo is so strong, because it is a combo that has not that many counters, can lane into a lot of things, but you then have to drop either jungle or mid. And I thought that in this meta, that dropping jungle is something that could be more viable because bans are less and the jungle pool is kind of in the open. But all in all, it's like blue side struggles because you need to blind pick support. So either you see like trash lanes, or you hope the enemy blind pick support first and they are looking to prioritize something else. But I think 5 pick support is just that great. If you 5 pick support, either the Nautilus is coming in your direction, you pick a Braum on 5 and things are going to be good. I think that you should look to either 3rd pick mid or 4th pick mid and just last pick support. Because I think Loud, the best player on this team, is by far their AD carry. I think you need to make sure that you have a good lane. And in both of the games, I think Tahm is just very hard to execute. Looking back at the game, before I wanted to show you guys this tweet here from Doinby.
低头老板，我觉得你们还是蛮喜欢这个方 plus 的打法。我就这么说吧，等我年纪再大了，我真的打不了选手的时候，记得联系我一下啊。那个教练位置留给我一个，哥哥，我蛮喜欢你的。等我年纪再大了啊，就是打不下去的时候，我直接去找你吧。
Obviously, it's in reference to G2 just stealing the Nautilus, right? Which is funny because G2 lost to the Nautilus in the finals. They refused to ban it. Let's take a look at the rest. In regards to the game, I think that the pivotal point was the Nasher, because Lowland Lions, Jesus, I keep calling them Lowland Lions, Loud were definitely in a winning position. It's like the craziest thing about this game, right, is they don't show it in this, but Sejuani had no items, level 1. She forgot to buy items. So when she smote her own red, she realized, wow, I have no HP. I have no XP. It was a disaster. We were giggling at it a lot on stream. Like we were thinking it is hilarious. Obviously it was a rough one. But considering the 2v2 on mid and how everything played out, God bless. G2 lost the 2v2. A big difference in this series, right, was just BB and his advantage. Like Broken Blade was completely smurfing on Robo. He was completely shitting on him. The top gap was absolutely crazy and immense. And I have to say that I am not sold on the Nidalee Nautilus. I don't think it's good. I think that a big thing here is just I think Loud is just not that strong of a team. I think a big focus, I think if they play this Nautilus Nidalee thing, a lot of things need to go right. And I think that the main concern is that you have to pull this off on blue side. And if you pull this off on blue side, you are either going to be in a position where you're blind picking Nautilus on mid And finding the matchups that you're going to be strong in is going to be the biggest challenge. I think pulling off a strat like this is a lot stronger on red side. Like if they go Nautilus Nidalee, let's say, right? Let's say they go Nautilus Jinx 1-2, and then they pick Nidalee on 3. I think that's far more dangerous, because then you can keep the Nautilus flex till 5, and the enemy answering into you is going to be a lot trickier. You have a lot more options, and I think that that's where you can pull it off easier. You know, that's where my headspace is at. Because none of what G2 has picked, besides maybe Jinx, is that premium. You know, they can find these champions on the red side too. And I think that it will be just easier to pull off. Because I think that you're at the mercy of the enemy draft structure. And I think that they got a lot of freedom and space based over the fact that, based over the fact that the enemy team went for Tamkenj on 4. You never win draft on red side if you don't flex. That's not true. I think that's very untrue. A lot of blanket statements in chat that don't make a lot of sense. Loud were very poised to win this game. With the draft that G2 had, they had a lot of champions that rely on snowballing the game and getting advantage. I think that's essential, but it just wasn't the case. Loud made a massive mistake when they tried to force Nasher at 20 minutes, because these game conditions are atrocious. It's just here, this didn't make any sense at all. Didn't make any sense at all because of the position of the map. There was no information that told them that, oh, the enemy's in base, or we have some kind of man advantage, we want to force a fight. Nothing at all. This is Loud. An additional layer of this, right? Maybe we can just pull up the replay, the full game. Game 1, G2 versus L11. Let's see if we have the full game. I just want to show you guys the conditions, the exact conditions of when they started Nash. So if you just pay attention to items, even though there is a 5k gold lead, you can't really act on this gold lead until you are actually ahead of the curve. League of Legends is a game where recipe value is insanely big, especially when it comes to champions like Jinx, because their scaling is exponential, because they have like stats that scale off of each other: crit, attack speed, AD, right? These are all stats that support each other, so the more items you have, the stronger items are. You get it, right? In this particular condition, right? It's like, even though Root is very far ahead, Jinx bases now, Root is very far ahead. Like right now, the goal differential is around 2k, right? It's a big deal. It's a very big deal, but it doesn't become significant until he finishes his third item. So when he finishes his third item, theoretically, he will have a 4-minute window, 3-minute window where he's going to have a full item gap. And that is where you should look to force. But now if you compare the item of Ari versus Nautilus, very limited here in terms of advantage. Darius equal to, of course, Renekton. Nidalee equal to Sejuani. If you look at this game from Loud's perspective, you should make sure that you pressure during the windows where Aphelios has full item advantage over Jinx. But now instead, right, Mickey is warding out and they're checking. They have full information over the area. They have full information over the area. It's like Root, you also see that his gun here, right? He doesn't have that many bullets on white, right? And he's going to use it to burn the Nash, right? So he puts a trap and then hits with green. And then Loud is already aware of the fact that G2 know. It's like Nautilus is on bot, right? And they look for this. And I think this just came with such a risk. Here, Yike, after the burst, the Nash went down to 82, which was dangerously close. And then they are fighting all in. Mickey found beautiful engages. I have to give a very special shout out to Mickey and Broken Blade for this series because they played really, really well. This was completely unnecessary because this just elevated the risk of the game, and Aphelios could have been ahead of the curve. Here, of course, G2 got full PTSD. And then once again, just the same conversation as always. It's just how Renekton and Sejuani are spacing in the fight is so important. Because they're always creating circumstances where Jinx is hitting for free. And we're going to see this a lot in the tournament because everything is going to be revolving around AD carries. But once again, Root is sitting on third item in base, right? And then this was the complete turnaround. The Ike is going to come from behind here and clean this situation up. Always important, guys. If there's a lesson that you can take away from today's games is plain and simple. If you're in a situation where the enemy can hit you and your AD carry can't hit back, you're probably inting. If you're CCing them and fighting back when situations where you're not actively creating space for your AD, you're probably running it down. Just pay attention to your AD more than you pay attention to the opposition even. Because if you are fighting where your AD carry is fighting, then you can actually, do things. And it's very important to understand when you should be kiting back and so forth, because you don't want to give them free lethal tempo. You don't want to give them free conqueror. It's very important. This is not dungeons. You're not playing WoW dungeons where you have to tank. Like, you're tanky, yes, but your purpose is to make sure that your AD can hit. If you're taking damage when your AD can hit, you're smurfing. If you're taking damage when your AD can't hit, probably you're inting. So look at the difference here, right? Look at how these two are kiting back. Right? Look at how Nautilus and Darius are kiting back. Right? They're kiting back. They're kiting back. They are seeing Jinx. Jinx is enjoying, right? No, the analogy works because of how threat works in World of Warcraft, right? But everyone is their own entity, right?
Battle cruiser
Thank you very much,
operational.
Jesus. Appreciate it, thank you. And then the turnaround is there, and Jinx managed to get 3 core, they get Nasha for that, all the good stuff. Okay. Coming into this game, I think Loud, they went in this exact same draft pattern, but they chose to pick Wukong over the Sejuani. I thought that their plan would be to just pick mid on 3 here, and then 5 pick support, but they went in the exact same draft pattern. They picked Jax blind, and I called it on stream that Poppy is turbo in this position because Jax, Wukong, and Aphelios is showing, so you just need a tank, and the tank that is Biss here is Jax against Jax and Wukong, is just Poppy. And then I also called for the Lulu because Tahm Kench on 4, it's just a disaster. It's like I predicted that the Yordles were going to be locked in here. Well, I didn't predict they would be locked in, but I did say that they're really fucking good in this position before they were picked. Because I didn't think anyone would be just down to play Poppy. But you need a tank, and the tank that is the best against Jax and Wukong is just Poppy, right? Then Lulu into Tahm makes the front to back, just super winning. Jinx will not have enough threat on her for her to die. She plays Cleanse or gets maybe Mikhails from Lulu, the game is just finished. And on top of that, you're picking Lissandra into Nautilus. So this is just a disaster draft from LLL. But once again, right, everything that worked out here for G2, I am thinking, I'd be still worried with the Nautilus and Italy Jinx 1, 2, 3, that if enemy 5 pick support, that things become more difficult. I think that in these drafts, Mickey got a lot of leeway and a lot of freedom. And I'm curious what happens if the enemy actually holds support to last and they just pick the standard mid laners, So I think the Poppy Lulu really cemented this draft as super winning. Because if Nautilus can make you have winning bot lane matchup on blue side, then I think Nautilus is giga broken. But I don't think it will be guaranteed, because I think teams will begin to 5-pick support when their enemy is showing Nautilus. Which inherently is a good thing, right? Because the flip side is, right? What would G2 do in other positions, right? What would G2 do in other positions? Either they would just blind pick Nautilus 4-5, but a lot of teams would ban Nautilus 4-5, and then it becomes worse. So there is definitely a layer of that, right? There is a layer of that where picking Nautilus and then sending it support is just good. Why not and not just Galio? Well, Nautilus is a way better support, and I think Nautilus is also a more flexible mid laner, I think. I think in terms of matchups, I think Nautilus is a lot more flexible than Galio. But they play similarly, but I think Nautilus is probably better. Another thing to point out is that Nautilus can actually jungle pretty well. And maybe that's something that we will see. But I think, you know, G2 are trying to think of ways, how do we improve our bot lane on blue side? Because everything is about bot lane. On red side, you need to make sure that you counter support. And if you let this, like, if you let this go deeper, like, what would they pick here? Maybe if they don't have Nautilus, they would pick like Thresh. Maybe if they don't have Nautilus, you know, maybe Thresh would be banned and Nautilus would be banned. It's like you have to think about this problem through the lens of what is the other option for G2. And I think G2 just plain and simple, they're trying to build a draft on blue side where they secure a better bot lane. But I think things will get a little bit harder when they 5-pick, support. But in the case where the enemy 5-pick support, then maybe they get counter pick on mid. And maybe that is enough value, right? Maybe that is enough value. All in all, it's like I was pretty down on the Nautilus. But I think the more I've thought about it, right? The more I thought about it, the more I'm like fine with it. I'm just not a super big fan of Nidalee. I just think that they can do exactly the same with, let's say, Viego Nautilus or Lee Sin Nautilus or Nautilus Belveth, right? This game, I think the best way for me to showcase this game is just to go to this point. It's just a 7-1. It's just a 7-1, guys. Destruction. I think Yak intentionally spared Croc here because, yeah, he wanted to keep the 7-1 stat line. Obviously, I'm kidding. I think the majority of this game, right, like looking back at the highlights, you know, the big moment in this game was just Mickey killing Croc together with Nidalee, getting double buffs, and then them threatening dive. Nautilus was just pushing every wave and taking it easy. They threatened dive on bot. Lissandra TP'd bot. Nautilus maintained tempo, and then he stacked the wave into top side. Nautilus is crashing mid wave, and Lissandra tried to contest, but she couldn't. And then they just dive again, and then Poppy was way too fed, you know, all that good stuff. All that good stuff. Once again, special shout out to Mickey, playing a wonderful series, and also Broken Blade completely just smurfed it. I think that Loud really need to rethink their draft. I think their top laner is playing very bad, so I think that their top laner needs to be a dog. And I think they need to put a lot more prio on the support. Let support pick later. Let support pick later is going to be better for you, because Root is a fucking good player, by the way. He played really well this series too, and that's it. Even though, you know, I think that we shouldn't hype up Broken Blade too much over this series, because I think Robo is not a good player. But it was definitely a fantastic series from BB, you know? I think it was a really good series from BB, so I don't want to take anything away from him. Really good Poppy pick, and I think the Darius definitely gave them like an angle to play for in the game. and he was winning in lane. Maybe he could have gotten a solo kill or two if he played it a little bit better, but was good. In regards to tomorrow, I have to say that in terms of my predictions, I think it's very hard for me to say flat out. I think Bilibili will stomp Rainbow 7. I think this is the worst draw that Movistar Rainbow 7 could have hoped for. I think Bilibili will eat them alive. That's me. I'm saying that, not seeing a single game from Rainbow 7. So maybe they surprise me. Golden Guardians versus Gigabyte Marines. This could be a banger. Rainbow 7 is LLA. This could be a banger. This could be a banger, guys. I think that this is going to be a really fucking close series. And I think that this could go either way. In regards to my other prediction, G2 versus PSG, I think G2 is going to win, but I think also it's going to be close. I think that it's going to be close. And then I think DFM versus LLL, I think that it is going to be the Root Show versus... it's just... my brain just wants to tell me that I think Root is going to be able to carry. I think Root is going to be just good enough to win this series. But I'm saying this with very limited information about the teams. I just saw them play today. So there's that. There's that. The top lane action is going to be fucking hilarious though, between DFM and LLL. So there's that. Okay. That rounds off the first day of MSI, guys. I don't know if I'll stick around to do Red Bull fridge out cardboard. No, it's real. What do you mean? It's real. It's real. It's real. Ladies and gentlemen, I don't know. Should I just play a solo queue and then we watch Champions queue? Is that the move, guys? I think that's the move.